All right, stay tuned to our podcast today. We have an amazing show where we're lucky enough to have Erin and Michael on, a couple who very early in their relationship had to go through a significant health crisis for both of them. And we talk about how that bonded them together, but also how it presented challenges and how they learned a lot about each other very early on. So it's a very compelling story. They really open up in a vulnerable way, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of it. So stay tuned.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tara Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin.
Thank you for tuning in today and listening to our episode. We're always thankful when we have guests on to learn from their experience, and we can take that and learn healthy relationship skills.
Absolutely. And we really want to dive in right away because we're lucky enough, again, to have a couple on. And I know we get feedback from our audience, like just how useful it is to hear the stories of what couples go through because of the fact that, like, we're all individuals, our relationships are different, but there are themes, there are things that just like, wow, I really connect with that couple. Like that was so useful to hear. That made me feel like I'm normal too. Like I'm not alone in this. And so, we're lucky enough to have, first of all, Erin, who works here at Relationship Renovation. She's a therapist with us. She is a mom, and she is a partner to a person she loves. And we're here with her partner, Michael, who's also a father, and they have a blended family, which is another thing that, a lot of couples out there are sort of working with in their lives. And welcome, Michael and Erin. How are you guys?
Thank you. I'm doing okay.
Doing great. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's fun to have you guys. And our topic today is couples who go through health crises together. And what's unique sort of about your story is that at different points in your relationship, both of you have gone through that. And, we normally ask it this question, hey, tell us about the beginning of your relationship. And Erin, you were telling me earlier today, like, it really feeds right into this topic today because it's a part of how you got together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Michael and I started dating right after I turned 40. And for those of us women, we know that 40 and all of the wellness checks that come along with that includes your very first mammogram. Mm-hmm. And right around the time we started dating, I got the call that, hey, we noticed something on your mammogram. We need you to come back. And then, yeah, there's still something there. And so we're going to just do a biopsy. And I think that was probably like the first week we were dating because I remember like, do I tell him? Do I not? So I sat down with him and I was like, so I need to say something. And you're not allowed to have feelings about this.
Not allowed to have feelings.
Because it's just a test.
Already
it's just
taking
a test.
Control. No.
But 2 weeks after we started dating, I got a call from my doctor that I had breast cancer.
Wow.
And so I called him again and we went for a walk and I was like, hey, you can tap out. I don't know what's to come, but you can tap out. And he said no.
Yeah, so because our children weren't kind of integrated into our relationship quite yet. We just started.
Sure, you just met.
Yeah, we decided I said, hey, do you want to go meet at the park? So we met at the park. And I didn't know at the time, like, because she got the call, but you were just about to get to the park.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was like, okay, we're just going to hang out at the park, have a nice walk. And I see her in tears. And she just is breaking down. And we take a walk. And exactly what she said. She explained it to me, and I saw the fear. And again, it's a lot to take in when you just started dating somebody,
Absolutely.
But I had already connected with her. I already felt like this is my person. This is who I want to be with.
Wow.
And so I didn't hesitate when she said, I know this is a lot, and you didn't sign up for this. And so if you want to tap out, like she said, you can. And it wasn't even a question. I said, I'm going to be there to support you. My thought was, I don't know, because my mom had dealt with cancer and beat it. But, I said to myself, well, if she doesn't have long, I don't know what the full diagnosis would be. I'm going to be there. I want to spend whatever time I have with her and be there to support her. So
What was that like, Erin? I mean, for you, like, hey, you just start dating this guy. You've been with him for 2 weeks, and he's like, and you're sharing, first of all, something like really vulnerable, but then also he's like, no,
I'm staying.
I'm staying.
It was really overwhelming, and just at that point, it was like it really solidified like he was somebody I could count on. My feelings of just feeling just trust and strength in a lot of ways. Would like to add that I was also sitting there apologizing for just ugly crying everywhere. There was nothing cute about those tears. I was a mess.
The first ugly cry Michael has seen you do. 2 weeks in. Understandably so, though.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you meet at the park. You've been dating 2 weeks. You decide like, hey, I wanna support this individual. Was it easy for you to take that support? Was it easy for you to say like, I want to be in a new relationship and also be struggling with, my survival and cancer?
Not exactly. And one of the things about that time, again, in our relationship, we were still new throughout that. So it afforded me some space.
Right.
So we were dating. We would see each other a few evenings a week, maybe spend the weekend together. He would stop by and say good morning to me on his way to work almost every day, which was wonderful. But when I just felt awful, I could call if I wanted support, if I wanted him around, but I could also just be a noodle is what I would say. I just need to be a noodle today. And I could just lay around and not be thinking about another person or a way, I could just be focused on myself during that.
For you, Michael, like how do you think it affected beginning this relationship with Erin?
well, again, there was no question of me signing on for it. But what comes with that was, foreign territory. There was a lot of, I knew that she would just go down this rabbit hole of these dark thoughts, obviously, especially when she didn't know the full treatment, what was going to happen. This is before the biopsy came back, right? And so we didn't have an outline of her treatment quite yet. So there were times where I just held her and tried to be supportive. And I knew, as men, sometimes we feel like we can fix everything, know?
Yes.
And I knew like this was not something I could fix. I didn't have the right words. All I could do was just lay with her in her silence and hold her and just try to be there for her. I think silence was her best friend at times.
Did you have to tell him? Did you have to let him know?
That I needed sometimes, I mean, because we didn't live together, yeah, sometimes I would say, I'm having a really hard day. Can you just come over and hold me? And that was a thing. Other times, if he was there, he was just this supportive presence. Like he would come over and I would curl up and go to sleep and like roll over with one eye, and he'd just be sitting there reading something or watching something, or it was just really nice when he was there just to know he was just present and there for me.
What's really sticking out for me is just how very real it got very quickly.
Yes.
And how, you didn't get to have that like wooing each other and doing all the like, oh yeah, I love this. And this is, it was just like, here we are.
Mm-hmm. Our early dates were, showing up with a breakfast burrito after chemo, or like sitting on the sofa until I crashed watching a movie, because I just wasn't up for a lot of going out and about.
Yeah.
We did try to do something fun. Like my best night was always the night before my next round of chemo, because I was finally healed and recovered. So we would try to do something that night. And then the next day, it would all start over again. I think one of the things We were talking about vulnerability and stuff when I lost my hair.
Mm.
And I found out much later he noticed it before I did. But I started losing handfuls of hair, and I remember noticing like where now I had bald spots and calling him and saying, I need you to come over tonight and shave my head. It was just, it was an absolute for me. I couldn't handle the in between. It needed to be gone.
Wow.
And she looks great with no hair. Like
She's a good bald
like
woman.
Sigourney Weaver, kind of coolish, aliens, kind of.
How, like, I have goosebumps right now thinking you've been dating for 2 weeks and then probably just a couple months in, here you are going over to Erin's house to shave her head for cancer treatment.
Yeah, I remember went over to her house, and she had a hair cutting party where she trimmed her hair shorter, anticipation for it falling out because of the chemo. And I remember running my hand through her hair, and she had a little bit of hair loss, but a clump came out in my hand, and I could not tell her. I let it fall on the ground. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, how do I tell her? Because, women's hair is a lot different than it is for us men. And, she kind of turned and she went like this, and she saw someone on her shoulder, and then she reached back, and it was like, oh my goodness, like it was coming out. Yeah. But that for me, I felt just so bad for her because, but she handled it very, very well. Yeah. And that's another thing. Is her strength through going through chemo and the radiation. I mean, she was still working. She was still managing her household. She was, that's Erin.
You got to
just
see
doesn't
that
stop.
Fighting spirit very early on, which you already said it was very natural that the moment you met her, she was like your person. But here you get to see like the strength of someone in one of the most scary existential times.
But also too her vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't afraid to be vulnerable with me, and I really saw that as a strength for her as well.
Well, it's interesting because you went through the honeymoon period of your relationship in an extremely challenging, with an extremely challenging dynamic going on. So there was this excitement of like meeting this person who you're like amazed by, which already happens even when like life is bland. Mm-hmm. But then you're in that honeymoon period, and this person, for both of you, it sounds like they're like, wow, this guy is like so supportive and loving and present and showing up for me when he could totally bail. And here's this woman who's like going through this incredibly hard time, and yet she's still like a hard worker, but also is able to be vulnerable with me. Like this must have been like just like I'm thinking of like like cement as it like cures, right? Like that the two of you must have just like
it was, yeah, and. I think in the beginning of a new relationship, there's a lot of physical intimacy, there's a lot of physical passion. There was for us at the very beginning, but I have to understand, like, there were days where I knew she was feeling nauseous and weak, and so you have to switch to a different kind of physical intimacy, which is just the holding and the touching and the being supportive.
The non-sexual.
So I think that helped, again, even made the bond even stronger for me.
When you're kind of leaving Erin's home, or in your experience, what was happening for you? Because I know you're trying to be strong for Erin and provide that emotional safety for her so she can be whoever she needs to be through this, difficult time. But what was happening for you?
I just felt like I wish I could do more. I think I'm consider myself, like, I've always tried to be the fixer of a relationship, or my personality is to build, to fix, to figure out how things are going wrong. And so to just surrender that and just be supportive, and not like, because I knew I couldn't fix the situation and I can't say the right words to her. So leaving that and going back to my life, like going back to my kids, and I would worry about it. I was constantly texting her, but I wanted to make sure that, again, like, I knew that she needed space too, and she had support from all her friends, from her family. So I wanted to leave room for that as well.
So how long did your treatment go on?
I had 4 rounds of chemo and like a month of radiation. So, and my surgery was in April, and then they took the month of August off. So I was going through chemo from like May through July. And they took the month of August off for me to recover. And I used to say like that was the worst thing ever because it's like I knew I was in for another round of stuff. And then I had basically the month of September that I was going through radiation treatments.
So almost a half a year going through. Okay.
I think it's interesting he said the word surrender because that was something that I felt like was a real theme for me when I shared that I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. A woman who I had always admired a lot, who had also gone through breast cancer treatment, sent me a message. And part of it was, I know it doesn't feel like it now, but cancer is a healer and a teacher. You just have to let yourself be open to it. And so that was my mantra is like, cancer is a healer and a teacher. What are the lessons? And so I felt like that was sort of how I went. It was like, oh, this is what my body's doing today. This is how I have no energy today. I guess that's just what I need to listen to my body and follow its lead.
So instead of trying to control the outcome, just a letting go and what are the lessons here, hour by hour, day by day. So you get through this, and like EJ kind of had said, you guys have already been like cemented and really like that backbone of like safety and vulnerability and support has definitely been established fairly early on. So what happens to your relationship kind of following your treatment?
So we were starting to integrate our families together, spending more time as families. And we decided just before COVID that we should all move in together. And
so this is what, 6 months in or like a year in?
This was a year.
Okay.
This was a year in.
And how many kids did you have and how many kids did Michael have?
I had 2 kids. At the time, they were 14 and 17.
Okay. And then Michael?
My 3 kids, I had an older stepson, but he ended up just staying with us for a few weeks, and then he moved in permanently with his mom. So I brought my 3 children, who I split the month with. So I have a week on with them, a week off. So they're there every other week.
And what were their ages?
The boys were both 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
My
Blending.
oldest son was 14. So that makes Anakin was 12. And Brooklyn was 7 or 8.
So a dynamic age range of a blended family.
I'm just thinking the first year, first 2 weeks, cancer diagnosis, and then let's blend in 5 children within a year. I'm so excited to hear that. How did that go?
It was pretty rough at the very beginning, just because, again, different lifestyles, and going into her household, I didn't want to like impose the way I do things. Like I didn't want to say, okay, well, this is how we do things. So I kind of just like let her lead the way. And, she had, she's a very like, I make lists and I have assigned chores. And so I'm not like that with my children. So it was kind of to adapt to everything. I think for me, it was easier. I think my children, because they weren't there full time, I think it was easier, but there were some times where it was, rough going.
Yeah.
How did the two of you as a couple handle that blending and the differences? Because here you've been supportive and vulnerable and like holding that space during the cancer treatment. And
well, this is something I would say that we're still a work in progress on. And I
thank
think
you for being honest.
I think what he said is really true in terms of like, honestly, we had that cemented couple relationship and like we knew we were each other's person. We had each other's back. Like that is not a question. But we hadn't had a lot of practice at communicating. How are we going to navigate the stupid stuff?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so what he described is like he didn't want to rock the boat. So I was kind of like, okay, well, this is how we do things here. Well, it didn't work to do that. And so again, that's something that we're still working
Yeah.
on. It's still a work in progress.
That's such like an important thing. Whatever the issue is, whether it's blending a family or dealing with in-laws or intimacy or whatever, like that's such an important thing for couples to hear, is that like
Yeah.
it is all a work in progress. Like the idea that we just get some like cure or thing that just like solves it is what makes a couple work, is the willingness to continue working at it, continue trying to figure it out, sort of falling on our faces.
Yeah, and we've recently discussed that we both avoided difficult conversations, especially when it came to the kids, because when it comes to your kids, you can take things the wrong way. It could be
Absolutely.
constructive criticism, but you can see it as they're possibly attacking your style as a parent or your children. There was difficulties at the time with my ex-wife, which brought another layer of just problematic issues of stuff that kind of
Yeah.
we pushed to the side that I didn't want to address. I know that she didn't want to address. And so there was a lot of things that should have been said that weren't. And
Sure.
as we are working through things, we went back and are talking about how difficult, like I understand, like, she would tell me, I wanted to say this, but I just didn't want to upset you. I didn't want to rock the boat kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think those, as difficult as it is, sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations. But again, I think because we went through so much so fast, those things were avoided.
So you're blending the family, you're moving in, you're avoiding the difficult conversations. And so then take us kind of like, are you arguing? Are you just like, is there kind of a tension in the air? Like, what's the feeling of the avoiding the difficult conversations?
Honestly, like we weren't arguing, and it wasn't tension. It was just, I think, each of us feeling a little bit underwhelmed or less than satisfied with certain things that
Gotcha.
were going on. And both of us recognizing, but we love each other. We love each other's kids. Like it was like one of those, in the greater scheme of things, does this really matter? But
Yeah.
it was definitely uncomfortable.
Agitating, like
Yeah.
consistently. Okay, so you guys meet, you fall in love, you go through this really intense sort of existential, crisis, going through cancer. Then you blend the family, and it sort of becomes like, okay, this is just the normal agitators of life, of like trying to figure out how to make this whole thing work. You're kind of, stumbling your way through it, but it doesn't seem like it's like horrible or anything. Then something else happens, right?
Right. Then I get diagnosed with cancer, with throat cancer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I had, prior to meeting her, when allergy season came, my thyroid would kind of swell, and I would get a little itchy throat and a little kind of wheezing and harder breathing. But one year, my neck started just swelling up, and typical man. No,
I'm fine.
I'll rub some dirt on it. I'll walk it off. It'll be fine.
Just a little swollen lymph node.
Yeah, swollen lymph node.
That's
and
what
my
he
throat.
said.
Yeah, and so Erin was like, "Look, because we were gonna go do something. We were gonna go on.
I don't remember,
I think
but
we were gonna try to get away. But she's like, before we do this, will you just please, for me, go get it checked out?" And so she's like, "Because it's looking pretty bad." And I'm like, "Okay." So I went to urgent care center, and they're like, "Oh no, it looks like you're going to need a scan." So they sent me to TMC. This was right about the height of COVID. It was like when COVID started taking off. So everybody was there were no, everybody was in there, masks, full protocol for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting there like at 5:00. I checked in, and I didn't get seen until like 8 in the morning the next day. And so that whole time I'm sitting there, I didn't have a phone charger with me. I didn't think I was going to be there that long. My phone died. It barely had any service on my watch. And so she couldn't be there with me. So I was just there, just sitting with a bunch of people and, waiting. I got my scan, MRI, and then they finally called me back into one of the rooms. And then the doctor came and saw me and was like, so yeah, we got your scans back. And is there anybody that you want to come here to be here because, it's kind of important news that we have for you.
Oh,
And I'm like, no, give it to me.
Just drop it.
Yeah, what you got? And so they tell me that they went through the scans and they can't say for sure it was cancer, but they were like 85% sure because of where it was developing and where it was at, the mass. And so it's like, yeah, you've got a tumor growing in your throat and it's around your esophagus. And so we're going to, get you an oncologist and an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And so I'm like, okay, all right, well.
wow.
So I remember, I think I did, I had enough on my phone and I just text her and I did say, hey, we have something else in common. And she's like, what? And I'm like, C word. And I don't know if she had any inclination when I went in, like it might be cancer. But she was like, I don't remember what it said. It was like, oh no, but
I joked it was like somebody had like put a potato on the side of his neck.
It was like a goiter.
It was, and he was a big guy. He had a big neck, and so I was like, well, maybe it's just like some like you make all these excuses. I thought it was like an abscessed something.
Yeah.
Like they just need to like poke a hole in it, let the gunk out, and like we can move on.
Yeah.
So I wasn't prepared for a cancer diagnosis. But I was glad to have a diagnosis so that we could know what to do next.
Yeah, and I often, when you get those diagnoses and before they tell you it's treatable, you're going through that morbid time of unknownness of
Like the worst.
Exactly.
I'm gonna die.
I started, and started Googling like, Hodgkin's and different things and, treatments and then what's life expectancy and, it was like 6 months and I'm like,
Oh my
am I
God.
going to have to tell my kids that their dad's going to die in 6 months? Am I going to have to
You just
tell
go to
Erin
the
this?
worst.
Yeah, you do. And I think, that's something that we both shared because there was that time where the unknown. So what can you say to somebody who is wondering if they're going to die in a few months? Because she was there at the time where she didn't know. I didn't know what to say other than it's going to be okay. Everything works out. Try to be positive. And for me, again, I went there, but I'm positive by nature. I'm a very big optimist. So my thing was like, I'll beat it. I ain't gonna worry about it.
And
Trying to be optimistic about it. But just coming home to her having her support me, was really, and again, seeing her go through it and see what a warrior she was.
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I can do
she
this.
rubbed off on you. And here you guys are, like in the fight of your life, you're now shifting roles from being the patient to the supporter.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you, Erin, to be on the flip side within probably like 18 months or something?
Yeah. So it was actually right around the 2-year mark. So from when I got my cancer diagnosis, it was almost exactly 2 years to when he got his. It was the most helpless and powerless I've ever felt in my life. And again, as the patient, I could go, ride the wave. I knew my body. I knew the things I could do to take care of my body. I knew like when I wanted support, I would ask for it. And, when I wanted to be left alone, I would ask for it. And so I just remember throughout his treatment so many times feeling like I was just sitting there. And because the other thing is we thought we had this roadmap. We've done chemo, we've done radiation, we know what that looks like. But his experience as a patient was wholly different than mine.
Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so my mindset going into this was, my experience with her, but when I went through the actual treatment plan, it was very aggressive. So again, I was like 230 pounds at the time. So they were saying, well, you've got, you can afford to lose some of that, so you're going to go and you're going to lose some weight. You're going to go through this. But we are going to blast you with very high levels of radiation to eradicate this. And your chemo treatment, your chemo treatment is going to be high as well. So again, though, like seeing her go through it, I knew she had her noodle days where she just didn't have any energy. But the nausea wasn't really that bad with her. So I didn't expect.
Gotcha.
Did it just knock you on your ass?
Yeah. So with the first round of radiation, it was like, oh yeah, because you just sit there and it just goes around you. You really don't feel the effects of it. But the chemo, immediately, like there was a ringing in my ears. There was like I was losing my sense of taste, and then the nausea became unmanageable. It was like they put me on 3 different things to try to help me, and it was like it just kept getting worse and worse. And for me, I tried to fight through it. I took it as a challenge, and I look at it as a personal challenge, which left her out. So me feeling like, I'm still going to get up. I'm going to, make lunch for my kids because they were homeschooling because of COVID at the time.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
tried to be there. I got to be there for my kids. And I kept fighting. And I thought I was doing like, no, I'm doing my what I'm supposed to do, and kind of not putting it all on her to take care of everybody. But that hurt her. She wanted to be there, and I didn't let her.
Yeah, I see you nodding your head over there.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I realized early on, and Michael sort of said, like, I had my family, I had my friends, I had all these people sort of rallying around me. I realized really early on that my cancer wasn't my own, and that it was impacting all of these people, and like I had to let them in. So like I had a schedule. I had a schedule where different people took me to different appointments because they really, really, really wanted me to. And I recognized that I got a lot out of that and that my people got a lot out of that.
They felt like they could be helpful and that you needed them, and they felt important in being a part of something that was really hard for you.
Yeah. And so I had this expectation going into this treatment that I would be his person. And I even talked to my work and was like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what I'm going to need to do, but like, I'm going to need some flexibility. And I took him to one appointment.
And he just threw that 200-pound pack on his own back and was like, I'm carrying this on my own.
Well, very quickly, it was not a 200-pound back anymore. You lost 85 pounds?
Wow.
65.
Wow.
65 pounds. I don't know. Or maybe, yeah.
It was
I got down to
You got down to 150.
Yeah, 150.
Did you ever try to communicate to him like, hey, Michael, I want to be here for you. I want to help you.
Yeah.
He did. And I think because of, our 2 different personalities, our 2 different upbringings, I never had support.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of support from my family, but for me, it was always trekking it alone, figuring things out on my own. Again, that kind of ego of sometimes that we have as men, like I don't want people to see me weak.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, I don't want to show, it wasn't about vulnerability, because I think that I did expose them, but it was about like, I need to take care of my responsibilities. I need to take care of her as well. Like, I don't want to be a burden to her.
Yeah.
So that was very difficult for me to accept that role. So yeah, and through treatment, I would take myself, and she would always ask me, do you want me to take you? I had friends ask me, let me take you. And I'm like, no, if I can go, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
And I would pull over the side of the road, throw up. I had problems with my saliva glands where I would constantly like have to pull over because my mucus would get so thick, I'd have to spit or throw up. So I'd like pull off somewhere and throw up and then keep going. And just like I had mint leaves with me, I was constantly trying to smell the mint leaves. And
wow.
so there's a lot of stuff I try to do to manage it. I have told her, if God forbid, I have to do this again, but I will not do it the same way. Like, I will let you in. I realize, my stubbornness, the ego that was driving me towards that, like, in the end, like, it wasn't worth it. And what she was saying earlier about how cancer is a teacher, like, it did. It taught me a lot of things about myself. And we've had time where we've talked about my cancer's effect on her, and how alone it made her feel. And, where she didn't know where her role was, where she fit in, because I didn't let her in.
Yeah. Well, and that's a hard place for you to be in, Erin, right? Because it's like there's something he's doing that's shutting you out. But because of the circumstances, like, what are you going to do? Like, come down on a guy who's lost 40% of his body mass and he's going through it. And it's like, I can't really bust his chops right now, but I sure as hell probably feel like shaking him up.
I put a lot on myself during that time in terms of like, how could I possibly ask for anything of him? Like, he can't eat real food anymore. He's throwing up almost everything that he does eat. Like, the smell of strawberry and Sure is like absolutely like a trigger to me now. So, and that was what I told myself over. Like, how could I possibly ask anything of him? He's putting everything he has into surviving. And that's ultimately what I want too. So we just have to get through this.
I mean, and it does just go to show you, like, even with a cancer diagnosis, like, we tend towards, like you said, there wasn't a frame of reference where you are like, accepting support. Like, you've always kind of done life by yourself. And that's kind of what felt intuitively what you do, because there wasn't this other frame of reference to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just want to add, and we've talked about this before, that, when someone is diagnosed with cancer and they have the support of a partner, a wife, a husband, we tend to focus on the patient and what they're going through. The flip side to that is the hardship that the partner has to go through. Because there's so many different things you have to navigate with patience, with understanding, and it does take a toll. And if you guys aren't able to communicate that beforehand or during, it can really bring a lot of stress on the relationship. I know that there's some couples that don't make it through it.
No, absolutely not. And this doesn't really relate to the cancer piece, but when we're working with couples in session and one of the partners, let's just say, has a big old ego, sometimes it's more of the male. And when it kind of starts to like strip down and there is like, actually, yes, I do need you. It's like that feeling of like the other partner being like, thank you, because I really, really want to support you too. You've supported me through so many things. It's just like that freedom that happens when both are able to be like, yeah, we both need each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think that's back to the sort of the lesson of cancer is like that. Sometimes it's hard to learn that lesson unless it's through a cathartic experience, it's a big experience that pulls it into focus. It's much harder when it's like, that's a lesson you got to learn. And it's sort of like you're trying to get a grasp on it and your partner's telling you, but yet life is normal. Cancer, it seems for you, Michael, was like a real wake up call of like, wow, I just don't know how to accept support.
Yeah, and before my cancer, 5 months prior to that, my mom passed away. And I noticed that I kind of did the same thing with her when my mom passed away. Like, I kind of like went into myself and just like, you know what, I'm going to deal with this. And her supportive role is like, okay, I'm going to let you deal with this, even though it's tearing me apart.
Yeah.
Through the cancer, of course, she's not going to say, hey, this is about me. This is how I'm feeling, because she's trying to support me. But she has to swallow all of that, and it becomes toxic,
Really?
if you don't release that. So it took a while for all that to get out and for me to know and me to look at it. And it's like, you know what? I'm so sorry.
All of these lessons within such a short time period. I'm just like amazed, overwhelmed, sad, happy, joyful about this story, because you just saying that your mom had passed 5 months before your cancer diagnosis. Did your mom pass of cancer?
No, she had
Okay.
ALS.
Oh,
So we watched her decline. She had ALS for 8 years, so it was really
wow.
slow progressing. But she was staying with my brother, and it wasn't. They always said it's not going to be the ALS that takes your mom. It's going to be something else. And she had to be on a BiPAP machine when she slept, and she was getting around in a walker, and she actually fell when nobody was there, and my brother found her, and she had already passed. And so yeah, we were dealing with that, which you want to say, well, we dealt with ALS, so we knew it'd be any time that it could happen. But just when it happened, it was really difficult. And again, like, I kind of went into myself, and again, for me, it was, I don't want her to see me weak.
You don't want to be a burden.
Yeah, I
and
don't
yeah.
want to be a burden, exactly.
So you spend a great amount of time early on in your relationship, first couple years, in a lot of intensity, a lot of challenges. I'm thinking that maybe the last year or two has been a little less externally destabilizing. What are the lessons in a period of life now where things are maybe a little more stable that you're integrating and you're working on based upon that early relationship experience?
I'd say one of the things, like, I feel like it's actually just been, even in the last year, that I felt like the dust has settled enough for us to look around and be like, is this really working for us? Like, we were surviving for so much of those first 2 years, that now we're able to sort of step back a little bit. And I mean, like, the example that I even use with my clients about like how we develop dysfunctional patterns when we're surviving is, we were sitting one day eating dinner, and I looked over at him and I was like, when did we start eating dinner in bed? Because, and we really, I was like, did you eat dinner in bed before you moved in with me? Like, when did this happen? And the only thing that we could figure out was that because during his treatment, he was in bed almost all the, like, it was hard for him to do anything else, that I would make my dinner and come sit down in bed, like, next to him, so that I could have dinner with him.
Yeah.
And then when he was able to start eating again, that's just sort of what we started to do. And it wasn't until recently that we started to kind of look at some of those things and recognize that maybe this isn't what's the best thing for all of us. And so we've started just noticing those.
sort of
The first step is noticing.
looking at patterns that were created as a result of those first couple years
Of
and
the
being like, hey,
storms.
do we need to make some shifts here?
Yeah, and I think we're at a point again where there's nothing traumatic happened to either one of us, where now, like, we can hurt feelings a little bit. I can tell her how I feel, except that I've been kind of keeping it, and vice versa. We're having these honest conversations, and sometimes they're not the easiest conversations to have.
No more
But
avoiding.
we come out the other end stronger and more empathetic with the other person. And I think that is very important, because I think there have been times where both of us kind of like held it in to spare the other person's feelings because of what we were going through at the time.
Absolutely.
So now I think we're just like, we kind of rip that bandage off and kind of like, hey, look at it.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of couples who don't have like the storybook beginning to their relationship for a variety of reasons. And I think what that does is sometimes when things get challenging later on, or when they're like, what is normal? They look back and they're kind of like, oh, well, there's like a hopelessness that we never had that. And it sounds like what you guys are saying that's really positive is like, we went through this like intensity really early on. It did like bond us, but it also created some problems and created some systems that now intentionally, because we still love one another, we still really want to make this work, we're sort of untangling some knots, and we're learning the lessons that we'll learn from those and integrating them into hopefully what is a little more of a less bumpy, less storms in your life for a period of time at least.
Yeah, I think there is some positive and negatives going through what we went through at such an early stage, but you kind of come out the other end saying, for me anyways, it was like I know that she's got me. Like no matter what.
Yeah.
Like there's some questions some couples go through where if things really get bad, is this person really
Really
going to
gonna
stick
be
around
there.
for me? If I go through my most vulnerable state, how are they going to view me? And I know that, if I need her, no matter what state I'm in, she's going to be there for me. She's my rock. And I hope she feels the same way about me.
Absolutely.
There's
That's
that
awesome.
core trust that no matter what, and life has thrown a shit ton at you, we got this, and we
Yeah.
can trust that we have each other's back always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much. We
Thank you.
really appreciate your willingness to come on here and share such a personal story.
Absolutely.
So happy that you guys found each other, and get ready for that honeymoon period. We'll have you back on. Honeymoon period 5 years in.
All right, Tara. Well, again, always blessed to have such wonderful guests coming on, sharing their stories. We appreciate all of you out here who are part of our community that's dedicated to personal wellness, that's dedicated to relationship wellness. We do appreciate when you guys give us a review, when you share our podcast with another person. We just know that the more we can be mindful about ourselves and our own personal growth and integrate that with somebody we love, it's just the base level of communities, and we're just very dedicated to being a part of healing.
And again, from my heart, thank you, Erin and Michael. I know that this podcast and our listeners are probably crying. And also like, wow, the strength and resilience of that couple bond from very early on is significant. And really, how do we just reach to that core trust that our person has our back no matter what, and try not to, sweat the little stuff. So thank you for your story, for your wellness now. I'm so grateful that you're here and a part of our family. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Your relationship deserves it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Me and you just singing on the train.